As I walked into the grand ballroom, the soft glow of chandeliers above cast a warm light on the sea of elegantly dressed faces. Laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the air, a symphony of celebration that contrasted sharply with the nagging thoughts swirling in my mind. I was Mark Thompson, a self-made businessman who had clawed his way up from nothing. Yet, in this moment, surrounded by the elite of the city, I felt a strange emptiness creeping in. "Mark, over here!" Jake's voice boomed across the room, pulling me from my reverie. He stood at a table, flanked by friends, his infectious grin promising mischief. I made my way over, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries as I navigated the crowd. "Finally! I thought you'd forgotten us," Jake teased, clapping me on the back. "We were just discussing how you need to loosen up a bit." "Yeah, right?" I replied, rolling my eyes. "You know I have a business to run." "Exactly. That's why we're here to help you live a little. How about a wager?" Jake's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Let's spice things up. I dare you to marry a stranger for a day." Laughter erupted from the group, and I felt my cheeks flush slightly. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, half laughing, half serious. "You really think I'm going to marry someone I don't even know?" "Why not? It's just for a day." Jake leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "Think of it as a way to break out of your business shell. Plus, it's all in good fun. What do you say?" My friends cheered, egging me on, and I could feel the tension building in my chest. I was always the one with a plan, the one who calculated every risk. But something about the ridiculousness of the challenge ignited a rebellious spark in me. "Fine," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "I'll do it." "Awesome. Let's find you a woman," Jake exclaimed, a conspiratorial grin spreading across his face. The group erupted in cheers, and I couldn't help but smile at their enthusiasm. As the night wore on, my friends began to scour the room for a suitable candidate. I stood awkwardly, the prospect of marrying a stranger hanging heavily in the air. What if I end up with a total weirdo? I joked, trying to mask my unease. "Oh, come on. That's part of the fun." Jake laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Just relax, Mark. It's only for a day. You might actually enjoy it." Just as I was beginning to doubt my decision, I caught sight of a woman sitting alone at the edge of the room. She was plus-sized, with curly hair framing her face and a genuine smile that lit up her features. There was an air of warmth about her, something that made me curious. "Hey, what about her?" I pointed, trying to sound casual. "Good choice. Let's go," Jake said, and before I could back out, my friends were already ushering me toward her. "Excuse me," Jake said, his voice loud and brimming with confidence. "We have a proposition for you." The woman looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. "A proposition?" "Yeah, my friend here, Mark, has dared himself to marry a stranger for a day. What do you say?" I felt heat rush to my face as I realized how ridiculous this all sounded. The woman raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke," I interjected, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'm Mark, and well, I guess I'm the one who's been dared." She laughed softly, and I found myself captivated by the sound. "Sarah," she introduced herself, her voice warm and inviting. "So, you're really serious about this?" "Kind of," I stammered, feeling the weight of the challenge. "It's just a bet, but I'm in." "Interesting," Sarah mused, her gaze searching mine. "I guess this could be fun. But just so you know, I'm not some trophy for your friends to gawk at." "No, I wouldn't think of it that way," I replied, surprised by the intensity of her gaze. "I assure you, I'm not like that." As we continued to talk, I felt a strange connection beginning to form, an unexpected spark that made me question everything I had thought about this ridiculous wager. What started as a light-hearted dare was suddenly becoming something much more complicated. As I stepped into the cozy cafe, The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wrapped around me like a warm blanket. The soft chatter of patrons and the clinking of cups provided a comforting backdrop, but my heart raced with an unusual mix of excitement and anxiety. I was here to meet Sarah Miller, the woman I had agreed to marry for a day as part of a ridiculous bet with my friends. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to shake off the nervousness that threatened to consume me. I spotted her sitting at a small table in the corner, her head bent over a book. She was beautiful in a way that was different from the women I usually dated. Her plus-sized figure radiated confidence, and her curly hair framed her face perfectly. She looked up, and our eyes met for a brief moment. I felt a jolt of electricity, which I quickly dismissed as my imagination playing tricks on me. "Hey, Sarah." I approached her trying to sound casual, but my voice cracked slightly. "I'm Mark." Her expression shifted from surprise to cautious curiosity as she closed her book. "Mark, right? The guy from the party?" She gestured for me to sit down, her movements graceful yet guarded. "Yeah, that's me," I said, settling into the chair opposite her. "So, I guess we're supposed to spend the day together?" She raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism in her gaze. "Is this some kind of joke? I mean, marrying a stranger for a day sounds like a plot twist in a bad rom-com." I chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "It feels a bit like that, honestly. But I promise it's not as crazy as it sounds. Well, maybe it is. My friends dared me to do it, and I thought, why not?" "Why not?" she echoed, her tone flat. "That's not exactly a glowing endorsement for my company, is it?" I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. "I didn't mean it like that. I didn't expect you to be so intriguing. You have this aura about you." Her expression softened slightly, but I could still see the walls she had built around herself. "Intriguing, huh? That's one way to put it. So tell me, what do you think about plus-sized women?" I was taken aback by her directness. "Honestly, I don't think about it much. I mean, I've dated women of all shapes and sizes. It's never been something I judged people by." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "So you're saying you're not a shallow jerk? Because that would be refreshing." "I try not to be," I replied, feeling the tension between us shift slightly. "But I understand if you're skeptical. This whole situation is unconventional." Sarah let out a small laugh, and the sound was warming. "You have no idea. I've had my fair share of awkward situations. I've spent most of my life feeling like the odd one out, you know? Always the big girl, in a world that celebrates thinness." As she spoke, I couldn't help but be drawn into her story. There was a raw honesty in her voice that struck a chord deep within me. "That sounds tough. I mean, I can't imagine what that must be like." "It is," she said, staring into her cup as if searching for answers. "But I've learned to embrace who I am. Took a long time, though. I used to let people's opinions define me. It was exhausting." The sincerity in her words touched something inside me. I found myself wanting to know more about her life, her dreams, and her struggles. "What changed for you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "I realized that my worth isn't tied to my size or what others think of me," she replied, lifting her gaze to meet mine. "I'm more than a number on a scale. I have dreams, aspirations. I want to travel, to write, to experience life fully." Her passion was infectious. I felt a strange connection forming, and I found myself wanting to support her in those dreams. "What's stopping you from doing those things?" She chuckled softly, a hint of sadness lacing her words. "Money, mostly. And fear. It's easier to stay in my comfort zone, even if it's not truly comfortable." "Maybe I could help with that," I suggested, my voice steady. "I mean, not in a patronizing way. Just let's make today fun. Let's step outside of our comfort zones together." She looked at me, her expression a mixture of surprise and contemplation. "You really mean that?" "Absolutely. I replied, feeling an unexpected surge of determination. Let's turn this bet into something worthwhile. As we sat there, the initial awkwardness began to fade, replaced by an understanding that hinted at the possibility of something more profound than either of us had anticipated. As Sarah and I made our way to the amusement park, I felt a bubbling mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was not just another day for me. It was a dare, a bet that could easily be laughed off with my friends later. But as I glanced at Sarah, her face illuminated with joy, I felt that this day might transcend the limitations of our initial wager. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I asked, half joking. I was still trying to wrap my head around the idea that I was spending the day with someone I barely knew, and that someone was about to be the center of attention for a full day. "Ready? I was born ready. You don't know what you're missing out on," she replied, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. We entered the park, and the sounds of laughter, screams, and music enveloped us. I watched as Sarah's face lit up at the sight of a roller coaster. "Oh, we have to ride that. It's the best." "Are you sure about that? It looks pretty intense," I said, trying to gauge her enthusiasm. "Please, I've been on scarier things." "You're not scared, are you?" she teased, nudging me playfully. "Scared? Me? Never," I retorted, trying to sound more confident than I felt. As we approached the ride, the vibrant colors and the dizzying heights made my stomach flutter. But seeing Sarah's excitement, I couldn't help but feel a rush of adrenaline. We climbed into the seats, buckled ourselves in, and as the coaster climbed higher, I could hear her joyous laughter mixing with the wind. "Look at the view, Mark," she shouted, throwing her arms up as we reached the peak. And then we plunged down. I screamed, but it was more out of surprise than fear. I turned to Sarah, and in that moment, I saw pure exhilaration on her face. The ride ended, and we stumbled off, breathless and giddy. "That was amazing," she exclaimed, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Yeah, it was," I admitted, still trying to catch my breath. "You were right. I didn't know what I was missing." As we wandered through the park, we shared cotton candy and played games, our laughter ringing out. With each passing moment, I found myself more drawn to her spirit. It was refreshing, almost intoxicating. Eventually, we found ourselves at the Ferris wheel, the massive structure looming above us. "Let's go up there," Sarah said, pointing eagerly. "I want to see the park from the top." As we boarded the gondola, I felt a flutter of nerves. The wheel slowly ascended, and as we reached the top, the world spread out beneath us. The view was breathtaking, but it was Sarah's expression that captivated me the most. "Isn't it beautiful?" she whispered, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It really is," I replied, my gaze shifting from the scenery to her. "But I think you make it even more beautiful." She turned to me, her expression shifting from wonder to something deeper. "You know, Mark, people often see me and think they know who I am. But it's hard. I faced a lot of judgment because of my size. People can be cruel." I felt an unexpected heaviness in my chest. "I'm sorry to hear that. No one should have to go through that." "I try to stay strong," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "But there are days that it really gets to me. Like when I was in high school. I was bullied terribly. They'd call me names, mock me in front of everyone. I just wanted to disappear." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had never really considered the weight of those experiences, the emotional scars they could leave behind. "I can't imagine how painful that must have been," I said softly. "But you seem so vibrant now." She smiled, but there was a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "I've learned to embrace who I am, but it's a constant battle. I just wish people could look beyond the surface." My heart ached for her. "I get that. I've always been focused on appearances, on what people think of me. But being here with you, I'm realizing there's so much more to life." Our eyes locked, and in that moment the world faded away. I leaned closer, drawn in by her vulnerability and strength. The connection between us felt electric, like a thread binding our souls together. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Sarah," I whispered, feeling an overwhelming urge to comfort her. She nodded, her gaze softening. "It's not easy to talk about, but it feels good to let it out." As we lingered in that embrace, time seemed to stand still. I felt a warmth radiating through me, a sense of closeness that I hadn't expected. For the first time, I questioned the bet, the wager, and what it truly meant. Maybe this day was about more than just a dare. Maybe it was about finding something beautiful in unexpected places. As I walked into the office the next morning, the air was thick with the usual banter and laughter of my colleagues. The atmosphere was light, but I couldn't shake the weight of my thoughts from the previous day. Sarah's laughter echoed in my mind, her stories tugging at my heartstrings in a way I hadn't anticipated. I tried to focus on the reports in front of me, but my friend's teasing soon pulled me back to reality. "Hey Mark, how's your wife?" Jake called out from across the room, a mischievous grin plastered on his face. The others joined in, chuckling and nudging each other. "Very funny," I replied, rolling my eyes. It was just one day. But even as I said it, I felt a twinge of annoyance mixed with something else. Something I couldn't quite identify. "Just one day," Jake mimicked. "Come on, man. You looked like you were having the time of your life. Admit it, you're in love." I shot him a glare, but inside I felt a flicker of truth in his words. I had enjoyed my time with Sarah more than I cared to admit. As the laughter continued, I found myself lost in thought. I wondered what she was doing at that moment. Was she at work? Or maybe enjoying a quiet day at home? The day dragged on. I tried to keep myself busy, but my mind kept wandering back to her. I remembered the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her dreams, how she laughed freely as we rode the Ferris wheel. I felt a strange longing that I had never experienced before, and it both excited and terrified me. That evening my phone buzzed, pulling me from my reverie. A message from Jake popped up. "You coming out for drinks tonight? You need to celebrate your marriage." I typed a quick no and tossed my phone aside. I was not in the mood for their shenanigans. Instead, I decided to head home, hoping to clear my head. But as I settled into bed, a sense of unease crept over me. Just as I was drifting off, my phone rang, shattering the silence of my room. It was my brother, his voice filled with panic. "Mark, it's bad. There's been an accident. You need to get to the hospital. It's serious." My heart sank. I felt a cold wave wash over me as I processed his words. "What happened?" "Who?" "It's you, Mark. You were in a car accident. They said you blacked out behind the wheel. You need to hurry." Panic clawed at my chest as I rushed to get dressed. I stumbled over my own feet, my mind racing with fears I couldn't articulate. What did this mean for me? Would I be okay? I drove to the hospital in a haze, each red light feeling like a countdown to something I dreaded. When I arrived, the sterile smell of antiseptic hit me like a brick wall. I was ushered into a waiting area, anxiety knotting my stomach. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity as I waited for news, my brother by my side, his expression grave. Finally, a doctor approached, his face serious. "Mark, you've suffered a concussion and some internal injuries. We need to monitor you closely." I nodded, trying to process everything, but my mind kept drifting. I couldn't shake the thought of Sarah. Would she even care? Did she even want to see me again? As the night wore on, I lay in the hospital bed, the fluorescent lights glaring down at me. The beeping of the machines became a dissonant lullaby, and I felt utterly alone. My friends hadn't shown up, and I couldn't help but feel abandoned. Just when I thought I might drift off to sleep, I heard a soft voice. "Mark." I blinked, and there she was, Sarah, standing in the doorway, concern etched on her face. She rushed to my side, her hand gripping mine tightly. "Oh my God, I was so worried about you," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. "Sarah," I breathed, surprised and relieved to see her. "You came." "Of course I did. I heard about the accident. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing," she said, her eyes searching mine. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been run over by a truck," I chuckled weakly. But the truth was, seeing her made me feel a warmth that I desperately needed. "I'm glad you're okay," she whispered, her thumb brushing over my hand. In that moment, everything else faded away. I realized that I longed for her presence more than I had anticipated. As we sat in silence, a bond formed between us, stronger than I ever imagined. It was a moment of vulnerability that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and connection. I lay on the hospital bed, the sterile smell of antiseptic invading my senses as I tried to grasp the gravity of my situation. My body felt heavy, like I was sinking beneath the weight of uncertainty. The rhythmic beep of the monitor beside me echoed my heartbeat, each sound a reminder of my fragility. I had always been the one in control, the businessman who faced challenges head-on, but now I felt utterly powerless. The nurse entered, her expression a mix of professionalism and sympathy. "Mr. Thompson, we need to discuss your blood type. Unfortunately, we're having trouble finding a compatible donor." Her voice was calm, but I could detect the undercurrent of urgency. My heart raced. Fear began to creep in. "What do you mean?" "There's no one." She nodded, glancing down at her clipboard. "We've checked with everyone we could, but your rare blood type complicates things. We might have to rely on a donor from outside the hospital." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "How long do I have?" Her gaze met mine, and I could see the concern etched into her features. "We need to act quickly, Mark. The situation could become critical." "Damn it," I muttered under my breath, frustration bubbling to the surface. Just then the door swung open and in she walked Sarah. Her presence lit up the room, contrasting starkly with the sterile environment surrounding me. The moment I saw her, a sense of relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the dread I felt regarding my condition. "Mark!" she exclaimed, rushing to my side. Her eyes were wide with concern, and despite the tubes and monitors, I felt a surge of warmth. "What's going on? I heard you were hurt." "It's complicated," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just a little accident, nothing I can't handle." But as I spoke, I could see the worry etched on her face, the way her brow furrowed as she took in my pallor. "Don't lie to me," she said, crossing her arms. "You look terrible. What did the doctors say?" I hesitated, not wanting to burden her with the details, but the look in her eyes compelled me to be honest. "They're having trouble finding a blood donor. Apparently I have a rare type and they're running out of time." Her expression shifted from concern to determination. "I can help," she stated, her voice resolute. "I want to get tested. I could be a match." I shook my head, a mixture of disbelief and gratitude washing over me. "Sarah, you don't have to do that. You barely know me. This isn't your responsibility." "I don't care," she insisted, stepping closer, her intensity almost palpable. "I can't just sit here and do nothing when you might need me. We've been through too much together for me to walk away now." The sincerity in her voice sent a jolt through me. I'd expected her to back down, to shy away from the weight of the situation, but here she was, ready to fight for me. "You're amazing, you know that?" I said softly, my heart swelling with emotion. "But what if you're not a match? What if something goes wrong?" "Then we'll deal with it," she replied, her eyes locked onto mine with unwavering conviction. "Right now, all that matters is that you get better." Just then, the nurse returned, breaking the moment with the clipboard in her hands. "All right, Sarah, We'll need to do a quick blood test to see if you're compatible." The tension in the room was palpable as Sarah nodded, her expression unwavering. "Let's do it. I'm ready." As the nurse prepared the necessary equipment, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of fear and admiration. Here was this woman, who had entered my life as part of a ridiculous bet, now standing by my side in my darkest hour. I watched her as she rolled up her sleeve, the determination in her eyes shining brighter than ever. "Mark," she said, glancing at me as the nurse drew her blood, "whatever happens, I want you to know that I believe in us. You have to fight, and I'll be here." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. The stakes had never felt higher, and the bond we were forging in this moment was deeper than anything I had ever imagined. As the nurse left the room with Sarah's sample, I felt a swell of hope mixed with anxiety. Could this woman truly be the answer I didn't know I needed? In that moment, as I lay there vulnerable and exposed, I realized that Sarah was no longer just a challenge or a bet. She had become my lifeline. The world around me was a blur as I slowly emerged from the fog of unconsciousness. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled my nostrils, and the beeping of machines created a rhythmic backdrop that I struggled to comprehend. I blinked a few times, trying to adjust to the bright light above me, and then I turned my head slightly. There she was, Sarah, sitting in the chair beside my bed, her eyes deeply focused on me. A mixture of relief and worry etched across her face. "Mark," she whispered, her voice a soft melody that cut through the haze. "You're awake." "Sarah," I croaked, my throat dry as dust. I tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness washed over me, forcing me to lie back down. "What happened?" "You had an accident. You've been in and out of it for a few days," she explained, her brow furrowing as she reached out to gently touch my arm. "But you're going to be okay. You received the transfusion. The doctors said it was a success." A flood of emotions crashed over me. I remembered the fear of my situation, the dread of being alone, of the realization that my friends were nowhere to be found. But here was Sarah, the woman I had treated like a joke, sitting by my side. You helped me?" I asked, struggling to grasp the enormity of what had just happened. "Of course I did," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You needed me, Mark. I wouldn't have let anything happen to you." I searched her face, and in that moment something shifted. The laughter and banter of our first meeting felt like a lifetime ago. I had thought of Sarah as part of a bet, a dare made by my friends, but now I was seeing her for who she truly was. A strong, compassionate woman who had risked everything for me. "I don't know how to thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to," she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Just don't push me away." I hesitated, my heart pounding as I wrestled with my feelings. "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you." I took a deep breath, the weight of my confession pressing down on me. "I didn't just marry you for a day. I thought I was just playing along with a ridiculous bet, but you changed everything for me. I didn't expect to feel this way." She leaned closer, her expression shifting from concern to something more vulnerable. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I care about you more than I ever imagined I could." I confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. "You've opened my eyes to what really matters, who you are, what you've been through. I'm sorry for how I treated our time together at first. I was so caught up in my own world." Her breath hitched at my words, and she looked away for a brief moment, as if gathering her thoughts. "Mark, I didn't just come here to help you." Her voice trembled. "I've been in love with you since the day we met." Time seemed to freeze as her words hung in the air. "What?" I managed to say, my mind racing. "You're serious?" "Yes," she replied, her gaze unwavering now. "I had to confront so many insecurities, and meeting you, even under those circumstances, made me realize how much I wanted to be seen and loved for who I am." She took a deep breath, her eyes shimmering. I thought you'd never see me that way, but when I heard you were in the hospital, I knew I couldn't let you go without trying. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, joy, fear, confusion. She had seen me at my worst, and yet she still chose to be there for me. Sarah, I'm not sure I know how to love someone like you deserve. My life has been so different, so privileged, and I've never had to fight for anything. Love isn't about fighting, Mark, she said softly, her hand reaching out to hold mine. It's about accepting each other's flaws, supporting one another, and growing together. You've already done that for me. As I looked into her eyes, I realized that this was the moment I had been waiting for. The truth was, I wanted to be there for her too. So what now? I asked, my heart racing. Now, she said, squeezing my hand, we take it one day at a time. Together. In that hospital room, surrounded by the sterile environment and the beeping machines, I felt an overwhelming sense of hope. I had come to terms with the fact that love can emerge in the most unexpected ways. And as I held Sarah's hand, I knew I wanted to explore this new path with her. If this story has touched your heart and made you think, subscribe to the channel to follow more inspiring content like this. Leave your comment below and share your thoughts with us. And don't forget to check out the comment box to discover something special we've prepared for you. One day it's just a story, the next it's the story of your life. Don't miss our other videos. Each one could bring a new perspective to your journey.